Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the budget workshop. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public notice of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Although this is a workshop where no actual items are passed, we do have a quorum of county council, both hybrid and in person. Mr. Dawson, Mr. Glover, and Mr. McKellen are online. And in the chambers are Ms. Howard, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Somerville, and myself. Oh, this is nice. Okay, that's my phone. Just hit it off. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have a fun day. May I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Mr. Llewellyn's now online too, sorry.
Mr. Llewellyn is online. Good morning, Mr. Llewellyn.
Hi, how you doing, Joe?
We're just peachy dandy. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Somerville and a second by...
I'll second.
Ms. Howard. The motion is the agenda item is motioned and second, and this will be accepted without objections, and I see no objections. Okay, I'm going to turn it over now to our county administrator. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of County Council. This morning we will be doing two items, much as we did yesterday. The first part of the Finance Committee presentation this morning will be our recommendations as to handle the funding that we have from the ARPA allocations. And Ms. Heather Rath is here along with Jared to help present that information. And then after that, we will hear from Dale Butts, the ACA for Finance, who will take you in and through the other things for the remaining parts of the Finance Division. But before I do that, I have one matter I need to get some direction on, and that is related to 278 and the bridges. We're trying to continue in our cooperative working relationship with DOT as the project managers, but we need to give them some directions moving forward with how we need to proceed with the bridge piece of the 278 corridor. There is a potential for, there was some consideration in Mksk recommendation and some public comment regarding, instead of doing one bridge across the corridor onto the island, that the bridges be separated. The smallest amount of separation, as I understand it, that you could do would be 50 feet separation, and that would probably add about $40 million to the project. There is no more funding for the project unless the state and the town of Hilton and state and DOT is not going to be in a position to offer any more funding, because they have been overly generous with the county in doing and upping what their original commitment was. So we need to give Craig Wynn with DOT some direction about scoping the design of the bridges, and I need to know if you all want him to proceed with scoping the design of one bridge, or if you want us to proceed with scoping the design for two bridges.
You want to do it, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead. Mr. Somerville.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We've given 120 million plus who knows what. The 40 million doesn't exist, so for scoping purposes, we have to proceed with the single bridge. And if, for example, if the town of Hilton Head wants to put up the other 40 million or whatever it is, then I guess we can reconsider. But right now, we're on track for a single bridge. I don't see how we can deviate. So.
Okay. All right. Is that the consensus of everyone on council?
Yes, any member of council want to weigh in?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Mr. McKellen.
Eric, has anyone given you a
we now see what the con is. Anyone giving you pros as to the benefits that we will accrue as a community to having two bridges at an extra cost of 40 million as opposed to one bridge as it's currently planned?
Yeah, the pro would be that it will look better, be more aesthetically pleasing to the people that travel that bridge. I don't see really how that's possible because the bridge walls are going to be so high, you're probably not going to be able to see down or anything internally if you're in the interior lanes going across the bridges, even if they're separated. If you're off the bridges heading toward the bridges or looking at the bridges from the water, you're not going to know they're separated until you're right on the bridges, and you're going to be, hopefully, if this all works out well, on the bridges only a matter of seconds to go from the mainland over to Hilton Head. So while there is that potential pro, I don't know if it's a $40 million advantage.
So a $40 million aesthetic facelift is what essentially they're asking for. Is there any safety consideration? Is there any evacuation consideration? Is there anything of a practical nature besides the aesthetic improvement that anyone has mentioned to you in negotiating this $40 million price tag?
I'm gonna let Jared answer that question, Councilman.
So that has been a question specifically due to evacuation and the safety. If one bridge was to get hit, we'd have a second bridge, albeit in the same location to evacuate. However, the bridge that they will be designing will be designed such to accommodate. So if there is an accident or some type of accident associated with the bridge, it'll be designed to withstand some amount of trauma and still be serviceable and available. So whether it's one bridge or two bridge, that's going to be included in the design.
So this bridge will be up to code for earthquake, I wouldn't say earthquake proof, but the new code for the new bridges would include the possibility of an earthquake. Isn't that correct?
That's 100% correct. So actually in one of the alternatives with leaving the bridge, one bridge, and creating a separate new bridge, the existing bridge is not up to code for earthquake standards today. So the new bridge would be designed such that it is up to all earthquake codes, as well as external forces, say a barge incident or any other incident like that.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Appreciate that. That's answered my question. No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Rodman.
Joe,
next.
this is Stu.
Go ahead, Mr. Rodman.
Yeah, I don't think two bridges make sense for a couple of reasons. One, from a distance, it's going to actually look wider. Secondly, obviously you got the cost piece, but from a pure safety standpoint, it seems to me when you do have an accident on the bridge, particularly a serious one, you have more flexibility to divert traffic to the other lane than you do if they're two separate bridges. So I don't see any advantage to designing two bridges, but if the town wants to pay for it and they come up with the money, that's fine. But they ought to also pay for the design of looking at it, because that's not inexpensive.
Thank you. Mr. Hervachon.
Mr. Chairman, understanding that the bridge is going to be designed to withstand hurricanes and earthquakes and things like that, what sort of scenarios would have to happen for that bridge to be unusable for an extended period of time, where having a second bridge would be a benefit? Like, what sort of traumatic event would have to happen?
I think it would be a major event. So a major earthquake, it'll withstand an earthquake. And actually the earthquakes, as far as bridge design standards, are not as damaging as some other events, because the material settles there and is designed to maintain its form and function even in a crumbled status in a major event. But this would be category 5 or above, something really, really extreme, beyond a 100-year event. So extreme event.
Okay, any other questions?
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
If we have an extreme event and one bridge becomes unusable, wouldn't it stand to reason that the odds are that the other bridge would be unusable as well?
That's a very valid argument. Yes.
Okay, so really what I'm hearing is that we're literally just talking about aesthetics.
Aesthetics, also, there's two other things in addition to aesthetics is both time and environmental commitments. So as it's designed now with the preferred alternative with one bridge, there's less environmental impacts, especially as it traverses across Pinckney Island. Two separate bridges would have more area of impact, so that would be a difference. Secondly is the way it's designed now with one bridge, there's one mobilization and saves us over a year in schedule time. Obviously, the bridge is the longest lead item on the entire project. That 1 year is significant in a dollar monetary value as well, because a project of this size, it's estimated that even 1 month of delay is $1 million at a time. So you can expect $12 to $15 million of escalation just over the life of this project, an 8-year, 7-year project. So by extending it 12 months by doing the two bridges, that's just $15 million in construction time, not necessarily construction cost, material time.
Right, but as far as benefits to anybody, we're really only talking about aesthetics. I mean, you know, the added duration and the added cost, I mean, that is certainly not a benefit to anybody. The added environmental impact, that is not a benefit to anybody. It seems like if $40 million is going to be spent, it seems like that should be on the Hilton Head side if they want to endeavor down this path, for one. But number two, it seems like if additional dollars are going to be spent, we should be talking about, you know, the traffic situation between where this project is going to end and the Cross Island Parkway. Is, I'm sure you all have seen the vast amount of communication that's come out of the public. It seems like, you know, the traffic situation is something that should be addressed as opposed to something that's purely aesthetic, but that's just my opinion.
Mr. Cunningham.
I think Jared hit one of the things that was a concern for me about two bridges, and that's Pinckney Island. The moment we run two bridges over that limits a lot of things that we could do, whether what we decide to do for the future for ferry services or not. That dictates a lot of things. The other thing I was going to touch on with Chris is, I mean, I know we're talking about keeping the bridge with the storm and everything, but if we get hit with a Category 5, we really, let's be honest, don't have much to drive to, period. Category 3, they predicted Hilton Head will be completely underwater. So just throwing that in there too.
I have a question. When the whole project started, we did the transportation penny. We had to raise money before we even went to the SIP to talk about building the bridge. Now we're talking about the potential of adding $40 million or more because of design costs and actual construction costs and other issues that would be there. And the county doesn't have the money. How is Hilton Head going to pay for this before it's ever designed?
Yeah, let me address that. They may not want to do this. I'm working very cooperatively with Mark Orlando and the town of Hilton Head. So I don't want this to come across as a situation that we're pursuing something that Hilton Head may be pushing us to do. That was a recommendation. I've communicated to Hilton Head that I thought council would not see the benefit in doing an additional 40-year expenditure to separate bridges because the benefit aesthetically was just not there to warrant that type of additional investment. So Mark Orlando and I, we're proceeding on together in this. We're working cooperatively. I don't want this to come across as I'm trying to push something that the Hilton Head Town Council or Mr. Orlando may not want. They may not want it either. They're doing their evaluation piece. But the reason I'm bringing this up this morning is we need to communicate with Craig Wynn as the project manager as to what we want him to begin scoping on the bridge design. And we can change it later, but I wanted to make sure that if I give him the scope, give him the idea of going to scope on a design, that you all were more comfortable with me telling him to do one bridge right now than to go ahead and do the two. If Hilton Head comes back to us and says it's important to us to do the two bridges, we're willing to pay for the time and the design and the cost, then that's something we can deal with later.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Rodman, and then I think and then Mr. Hervishon, and I think we're ready.
Here's the other gigantic risk. This thing has dragged on for a long time. There's probably 45 other counties that are now lobbying to the CIB to say, look, we need projects. This whole thing is delayed. It's not going to happen at Hilton Head. Take the money back. And that's a significant risk for us. That's $120 million that could disappear from us. So that alone, in my mind, is a compelling reason to not continue this discussion any further. Just tell the town, unless they can come up with $40 or $50 million and right away, they're not going to do it. They can't come up with it. Also, I think to Logan's point, if you get something that's catastrophic enough to destroy the bridges, the island's not going to recover anyway. So it's a moot point to even talk about it.
Mr. Hervishon.
Thank you. I asked about this some time ago, and I'm going to ask about it again, but is there any benefit, and has there been any movement toward having a joint meeting between the county and Hilton Head so that we're all on the same page on this project, and we kind of remove this game of telephone that we've been playing?
Yeah, we're working, I'm working with Mark on getting that meeting scheduled and established with you all. We were trying to get get all of our ducks in a row on the recommendations for us to have that meeting, but we've got to get the scoping done, because every year of delay that you have on this bridge, you're adding $1.5 million just to the cost of the bridge. Just because
what have been the roadblocks to getting that meeting scheduled, and what sort of ETA are we looking at right now as far as getting into a room together?
ETA would be a few weeks. I'm glad you asked the question, because I can use that with the town of Hilton Head to say, hey, our council's really wanting us to push for us to have a joint meeting with town council. Really, the reasons that it's been delayed up to this point is that we were waiting on the independent review to be completed. We were waiting on the Mksk recommendations to the town on the land use design and all of that there for that to be completed as well, so we could evaluate those and have a meeting with DOT, which we have done. DOT is looking at things that they can address as a result of the Mksk recommendations, and we're waiting to hear back from them as well. But
when were
we'll push for
the Mksk recommendations completed?
When were they?
Yes, sir.
Probably about 4 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Okay, I think.
Joe, one last thing. It would seem to me that before we have a meeting with the town, or that the Mksk folks could come in and give us a briefing on what they're presenting, because there could be some things that we want to weigh in on relative to the scope. I don't know, we have to necessarily wait to get that briefing.
Can they brief us simultaneously? So that
Yeah.
we get a brief, and then any questions, everybody's in the same room, gets to hear the same information at the same time.
Yeah, the town's already been briefed on the Mksk recommendations, and we've met with the town staff-wise and Mksk, and we also have had a meeting with the town and Secretary Hall at DOT with regards to those recommendations. We wanted to make sure that we had answers back before we actually met with all the elected officials one last time, so that you all wouldn't say, well, what's DOT going to say about this, and what's this going to cost? We need to answer those questions before we have that meeting with you all, and that's what we're doing right now.
Now, I would say that the consensus is have
One bridge.
Craig Wynn move forward with the design of one bridge.
Right.
That we hold a joint meeting as soon as possible, so that this project moves along, with the idea that we understand that any further delays are going to be extremely costly. And as Mr. Rodman said, there's outside forces saying, well, we don't know what we're doing, we can't get it done, so why don't we just stop it?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate one more time. We'll relay that to Craig, Jared will. I want to reiterate one more time that this is not any kind of issue between Beaufort County and the town of Hilton Head Island.
No.
Because I enjoy, and have a lot of respect for, as a manager, I enjoy a great working relationship with Mark Orlando and the town of Hilton Head Island Council. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
We do too, and we want to bring the design phase to closure, so we move to the next level. Okay, very good.
I'll
Okay.
turn it over to Jared now.
Yes. Good morning, Jared.
Good morning. 278 is fun, but this will be more fun, I promise. All right, so we're talking about ARPA. This has been out there for a long time. I know you guys have been chomping at the bit to hear something from staff, and we are ready.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because there are people online watching us. They may not know what ARPA is, so would
Okay.
you define ARPA along the way?
Yep, I'm going to do that in slide 1. So
Excellent, thank you.
I'll definitely do that. So anyhow, but so we've been presenting, or we've been at staff level coordinating and developing a plan. We want to bring to something that is meaningful and holistic, that you guys can react to, and that's what we're here today to. So our goal today is that we're going to be brief in our presentation and kind of talk about at large these buckets and plans, present to you some opportunities and projects that we've developed, and I'll show you and talk to you about how we developed those. Those weren't just out of one person's idea, but a group of effort. And then also give enough time that we can hear back from you guys. This is not optional. We need input from you guys, so that is we want to make sure there's enough time to hear back from you all. Additionally, where we want to go from this meeting today is we want to take these comments that we receive, as well as any comments you may have over the coming weeks, and come back to you with a full presentation at November Finance Committee, so on the 15th, to talk about this more fully and hopefully bring a staff recommendation for committee's consideration and approval at that time. So if there's questions after today or comments that you have, you can present those to myself or to Whitney, and we'll fold those up and coordinate with Heather, and then have that updated and prepared for November Finance Committee. So, all right, so our goal is to talk through it all to start with, and then there'll be a lot of things and opportunities, exciting things. Let us get through that, then we can talk through all of them, because there may be some that are more important to others, or something that strikes an interest to you versus the next person. So let us talk through all of them, then we'll come back. But we'll be brief, I promise, so be with us. Stay attention. All right, ARPA, what it is. So, on March 11th, earlier this year, 2021, President Biden signed into law a $1.9 trillion emergency rescue plan to respond to and address to COVID-19 public health emergency and offset revenue losses and bolster the economic. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's okay. We'll just go with the next.
Sorry, not working. Oh, you're going there. Okay, there we go.
All right. So here's what it is: $1.9 trillion that was signed into law on March 11th to respond to COVID-19 and the health emergency that we all endured. So out of that $1.9 trillion, there's a lot of different funds that were directly attributed to different parts of the economy. For the local governments, it was $350 billion. I know it says 65, but it's $350 billion that was to local governments. There's over 19,000 local governments and tribal leaderships throughout America, all of which received some amount of funding. For Beaufort County, our apportionment was $37.3 million. So this is a massive amount of money. Something once in a lifetime that you normally don't get this type of lump sum of money. Say, hey, put this into your economy. One thing, as you read all about the law, this is all about people. I know it talks about COVID response, but as you read through the minutia of the details of the law, it references people. So it's about rescuing and reinvesting in our people-based infrastructure. In addition to our apportionment, the state of South Carolina received over $2 billion in funding. And let me back up one point. I didn't define rescue plan or ARPA. ARPA is American Rescue Plan Act. So for those of you that don't know all the terminology and acronyms that we use, that is what it is, but we'll go and consider it ARPA for the rest of the day. All right, next slide. I can control it now. There we go. All right, so there are some thou shalls and thou shall nots written into the law. So 4 things that they strictly say this is what you can use, and then I'll get to the things that they cannot use. So first and foremost is urgent COVID-19 response. So anything that's attributed to that, that is an applicable response. The second thing that they want to do is to replace loss of revenue to public sector. So what they realized in the previous recessions in 2007 and 8, that they recognized that public sectors and local governments, that they were hit with the shortfalls of the economy, and they made provisions for that in this. In addition to that, they recognized that that shortfall was not all realized in 1 year. So they allowed this replace a public loss of revenue for a time period of 4 years. So even though the event was in 2020 mostly, they allowed for 4 years of recognizing revenue loss. So to date, what we have, we've realized 1 year of revenue loss, and we have 3 more yet to recognize. But what we have projected is out of our 37 million, that approximately 25 million we can attribute to revenue loss. And that's important, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. The third part is economic stabilization, so to households and businesses. And then fourthly, in addressing systemic public health and economic issues, particularly to those that had an unequal impact of the COVID-19. The thou shall nots. So this is not something that can be used to offset a reduction of taxes. So we got $37 million, we can't lower our property tax by $37 million. That is not allowed. This is also not allowed, and this is more geared towards states, to deposit into an underfunded pension fund. Not allowed. More on the local level, this is not a rainy day fund. This is an injection into the economy. They don't want you sitting on this money. There is an expiration date. You have to make sure you tell the government, the federal government, what we plan to do, and then we have a 2024 time period to have all our projects allocated, and a 2026, December 31st, 2026, to have all projects completely completed. Also, this is not intended for general infrastructure. They have kind of given some further guidance on that, but it does allow specifically for water, sewer, and broadband. So those are direct mentioned in the bill, but general infrastructure is not specific. It's not intended for that, even though they have allowed for some of that in some previous discussion from Treasury Department. Also, legal judgments and settlements, and then funding debt service. Those are also not allowed. All right, now it's working. So where are we? How did we get to this point, and what happened? So we recognized immediately that this was something big. We need to get ahead of this. We don't know all the rules. The rules were coming out as they were writing the bill, but we needed to get together. So at that time, early in March, County Administrator Eric Greenway said, you know what, let's set up a task force so we can start forming our priorities, and also not just a task force for us as county, but let's look at this as a regional approach. So in April, we formed that task force. We also brought on a consultant. We recognized that, look, maybe we need some assistance in guiding us and directing us. So we brought on Heather Raft, and she's the CEO of Heather Raft Consulting here locally in Hilton Head. So we're glad to have her. She specializes in strategic planning and advocacy at both the state and federal level. So she was the perfect fit for help us in this venture. So again, this is also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as I mentioned. So coordinating with stakeholders was very important. We wanted to make sure that the important things that have been mentioned previously, that those are things that we're going to focus on. So again, this was not just something we did in a vacuum. We created a task force. I know this is small, but this just shows the list of folks that were involved. We had all municipalities represented in this task force. So everybody, including Mksk and Hardyville, were invited. We had the school district as well as the higher education, so USCB and TCL. We had public health, so Beaufort Memorial was involved. Law enforcement, so we had fire districts represented, EMS, and the sheriff. We had utility partners. Beaufort Jasper was a partner, as well as mass transit, so LRTA was involved as well. This was a staff level committee, so that we could coordinate back. We'll take that information back to each other's boards or councils. And the goal was to work in unison with each other and not against one another. We're not trying to do one thing that somebody else isn't doing, but also how can we work together and make the most out of our opportunity. So as we started brainstorming and coming up with projects and dreaming big, this was the big thing that I think Heather said, look, this is big. Dream big. This is once in a lifetime. Don't think about small stuff. This is big stuff. So we kind of created internally 4 measures that we were evaluating projects under. First is projects that were high leverage. So there's a lot of money out there. As mentioned, it's not just our money, there's state money, the municipalities have money. So what opportunities are there for us to match our money and leverage with other monies? And that would be a measure as we looked at different projects, both at the federal level and the local level, and also the school districts. The school districts got money as well. So that's not part of the $350 billion that was associated for the local governments. There was a school district portion, and they got their own money. Second item was projects that had a wide array of citizens. So we want to make sure that this was something that was not one focus group, but something that citizens countywide and regional were beneficiaries of the projects that we had identified. Thirdly was a return on investment or a project that could create a revenue source. So something that was sustainable, something that really had a high impact, not something that we threw money in and it was just a sinking hole. And then lastly, something that was long-lasting and having an impact. I've joked around with my kids and I told them, thank you very much for allowing me this $37 million that we can plan projects, and they have no clue what I'm talking about. One day they're going to be paying for all this. I don't know how it's all going to work out in the end, but what we do recognize is that we have a lot of money and we need to be good stewards of that, not just for today, but for long-lasting in the future. So again, maybe put it better in my brain in a Atlanta Braves vernacular is these are projects that we're going to try to hit out the park. We're not doing onesies and twosies on these projects. We're hitting grand slams. And so I know Eric doesn't really go on the baseball, so this is like the Duke. We're trying to create a Duke basketball program out of these projects, not some other low-level program. So anyhow, something big, nothing small, and that's the frame network that we were working under. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather and let her talk about the specific projects and what some of the other municipalities are doing with it.
Hard act to follow. Thank you so much for allowing me to present and be part of this task force. I've really enjoyed working with your staff, as with the staff from other municipalities, to come up with our project list. So I'm going to take over from here and talk really quickly about how other municipalities are using their funding. So some municipalities are using it for pandemic impact grants, for workforce housing, for home repair or removal of structures, for security and technology improvements, for public recreation amenities, and also for sewer connection grants. So before we get into the presentation, I wanted to break down for you the spending allocations percentage-wise. I'm going to go ahead and start at the top right with the blue. Our recommendations today, out of the $37+ million, 11% would go to workforce, 7% would go to emergency management, 8% would go to a good neighbor fund, 10% to recreation, 5% to innovation, 11% would go to public health, 32% would go to infrastructure, 14% to enterprise and capital funds, and then 2% to third-party vendors and staff. So let's dig into the details. What we are recommending today on workforce. We are recommending that we put $1.2 million into the Soloco Housing Trust. We are recommending that we create a public service loan payoff pilot program, and this would be modeled after successful programs in other areas, and this would be a $1 million investment. That we would invest in our public safety recruitment and relocation for county employees on the EMS and detention level, at the tune of $500,000, that we would create and coexist with other nursing pilot programs with a project plan through Community Foundation of the Lowcountry to $700,000, that we would hire a headhunter for Beaufort County for $200,000, and that we would invest $500,000 into cybersecurity.
Would you like us to interrupt you with questions, or do you want to finish your presentation and then have questions?
It's completely up to you.
Mr. Summerlin?
I don't understand what public service loan payoff pilot program is.
Absolutely. Would you like me to go into the details at this point, or would you like me to wait until the end of the presentation?
I don't care. I just need, at some point, I need to understand what that is.
Absolutely. What we're looking at is getting that feedback from you, and we'll tell you what the program would be, get the feedback from you, and then we would come to you with a project plan on the 15th meeting, the finance meeting. Emergency management. So what we're looking at for the emergency management is a station alerting system for $2.5 million. And this would coordinate with all of the fire districts in Beaufort County.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Would that include the siren system that we never got put in?
So I can go through the details. This is from Chief Klein, and this fully integrated station alerting system would provide an enhanced level of service to all citizens of Beaufort County. It would improve response time, and it would be a streamlined dispatch system. Right now, what's happening, Ms. Howard, is that when the alerting goes off, it's waking up different people in different districts, and so this would be a more streamlined approach.
Okay.
The next one is a Good Neighbor Fund. So this would be a municipal project fund for $500,000 distributed evenly through 6 different municipalities: the town of Bluffton, the town of Hilton Head Island, the town of Mksk, the city of Hardyville, city of Beaufort, and then the town of Port Royal. And again, this $3 million would be divided between all 6 municipalities. One of the things that we found when we went through the task force is that we had different projects from different areas that we submitted to the federal level with Congresswoman Mace and with Senator Graham. And so what we wanted to do with the ARPA funding is to allow municipalities that have distributed their ARPA dollars to tap into ours at $500,000 each. And that's why we're calling it the Good Neighbor Fund. Next up, we would be looking at Beaufort County Recreation. We'd be looking at 1.25 for a St. Helena splash pad and play area. $1 million to build out the new Riverside Park. If y'all remember, that went through the county, and it had the kayaking and the camping at the new River Park. We would be investing $1 million into project planning for Burton Wells Water Park and Campground. And then again, we'd be looking at the countywide Reconstruction Era National Park signage, and this would be all across the county uniform signage at $350,000. And I want to pause here for a moment and tell you, on each of these slides, you're going to see measurements of success. And what we're measuring success on is the match to your comprehensive plan, Envision Beaufort, the match to the why, right? We talked about the 4 pillars of how we decided on projects, the match to community tracking. How are we going to track these projects? And then when are we going to complete them? Because again, we have a completion date. So you'll see those measurements of success all across. Looking at innovation and technology, we're looking at $500,000 for broadband adoption, $200,000 for a beta test with Starlink, Elon Musk, and we're looking at $1.2 million for electric vehicle, county, and community readiness. And so that would be some conversion, and then, of course, making sure that we are ready as a community for electric vehicles with charging stations. Public health. We're looking at bringing a community buildings to 3 different areas of the county. 1 at Gardner's Corner, 1 at St. Helena, 1 on Mksk. And then one of the needs that we heard in the task force was telehealth mental health resources, especially in our detention center. We're looking at $1 million investment in that. Infrastructure. So this is the big one, right? This is all over ARPA. It's all over at the state level. And of course, we know we need infrastructure investments here. So we're looking at planning for a regional ferry service at $500,000. We're looking at a general pot of infrastructure dollars at $8 million. This would give the council a lot of flexibility. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some money there so that we could go ahead and get some projects completed that are on your list. We're looking at water and sewer for $3 million. And then we're looking at a county IT data center at $400,000, and that would be within the county. I do want to go back and look at the general infrastructure and then the water and sewer. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk about the funding at the state level, and I'm going to be talking about matching opportunities. So just kind of put your caps on for those matching opportunities there. So these are our funds that we're looking at. And so we're looking at an airport investment for debt service at $2 million, solid waste and recycling investment for debt service at $2 million, a county garage capital fund, so that would be a garage for the county at $1 million, and then Defesky Island Improvements Fund at $300,000. Staff and consultant. This is the smallest piece, and what we're looking at with that is the $125,000 for an ARPA consultant. We're looking at a project manager from the county for $520,000. And then a fiscal management that would be a half-staff position at $260,000.
And just, if I might, for council. Make sure. Those would be staff positions that would help us to keep the projects that were funded on track, go through the permitting process, deal with everyone that needs to be dealt with. To make sure those happen. That would be housed in Jared's division under engineering. The fiscal management piece would be a person for finance to make sure we're doing the appropriate reporting that's required by ARPA, and that would be in the finance department.
But I had a question. Would that be for the duration, like the 3 year, 4 years?
4 years.
So those numbers are for 4 years.
That's
Thank
correct.
you.
And so what I want to do is we can go back through the slides and talk about feedback on each of the slides. Before we do that, I do want to talk about the state funding that they're looking at. So we currently are running with the House Ways and Means Committee is looking at their ARPA allocations, and the Senate Finance Subcommittee is looking at their ARPA allocations. We are hoping that those will be completed sometime in the next 2 months, and then that would allow us to have matching opportunities and be able to further our dollars even more on some of the pots of money that we have set aside. In addition to that, we have the recommendations from Accelerate South Carolina, which was the governor's task force for how to use these dollars. And in there, there's some significant matching money already set aside for water and sewer. I will tell you that that has to go to the General Assembly along with Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Subcommittee. All three of those have to come together and then make some recommendations. So I'm saying all of that because I believe that there's going to be some opportunities for us to garner matching funds on some of our projects as we go down the line. That being said, I think that there's ones that we can hit right off the list. For instance, the $2.5 million for the fire alerting system. I think that that's really important. And we can go into some of these workforce programs as well. So.
Heather, can you explain the grant? Did you explain the grant?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mr. Somerville is now, would you like me to explain the, oh, great.
Speak slowly, I'm not that bright, so.
So for the public service workforce, the loan payoff program, we are hoping to partner with, with Beaufort County School District and run a program, a grant-making program through Community Foundation of the Lowcountry, partner with Technical College of the Lowcountry and USCB. And this would be modeled after several other successful loan payoff programs where the public service workforce would assist new graduated desired positions such as teachers with student loan forgiveness, provided the applicant lives and works in the county for a certain length of time.
So that would be TCL in the school district?
We would really want, if we had the blessing to go with this today, we would partner with Beaufort County School District and try and get them to kick in some funds, and we would up that fund level and run it through Community Foundation and create this grant making program.
Pay off loans by teachers?
Yes.
And there's other programs that are out there that are just starting for nurses. So we could tie in all of those public service programs that would be a benefit?
So everybody that we talked about, and Eric mentioned yesterday when he talked about Housing Trust Fund and workforce employees and those specific employees, this is kind of to segue into that. This is another way of assistance to get that workforce available. So that's the housing component, but this is actually what we have and experience is a lot of times there's a need of transition, say an employee, rather than attracting outside employees, we have current employees that are transitioning from, say, service industry to nursing or CNA or something like that. So these type of programs are for our existing folks. We're not trying to recruit, we're trying to better our folks so they can stay here and not have to move elsewhere.
Right. And this would be separate from, let's say, the county public safety recruitment and relocation. For that, we'd specifically be looking at EMS and detention center workers, not only for recruitment, but also the relo aspect as well. So again, each of these, which ties into the housing, which ties into the overall workforce.
And there's also a public service at federal level loan payoff program, but it's really hard to get to. So that requires 10 years of service.
Right.
And this is kind of bridging that gap. So those folks that may have been in for 5 years or less than, or somebody that we want to keep and not have move away, that's what this is kind of intended for.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I
Ms.
could,
Howard, go next.
I've got,
And then we'll go to everybody online.
I've got 3 questions. So, like a teacher's assistant
Yes.
that wants to get a 4-year degree, is that what you're thinking too? That might want to
Yep.
get loan approval for that? That's great. Nursing pilot program would be people like their LPNs that want to be RNs?
Nursing pilot, we would work with the technical college and the community foundation to, well, first of all, we've identified what's already out there, but what we want to do is we want to bridge all of this together on behalf of Beaufort County. It would apply to CNAs, RNs, and BSNs.
Okay. 'Cause
So
there's
it would be
such
the
a need for
holistic
that.
view of all of the different nursing programs.
Okay.
But again, our 700,000, we believe we can get matching on that from some of the local providers, perhaps TCL and some of the others. Again, once we kind of get it blessed, then we can go forward and make sure that we holistically round out the program and that we're meeting your expectations.
Okay, great, because that's a real need for that. Last but not least, can we change it to Regional Housing Trust instead of Soloco?
Yes, not a problem.
We don't want it to be just Southern Beaufort County.
Good catch. Thank you.
Okay, online, Brian, I saw your hand first. You'll go first, and then Logan, and then Gerald, and whoever else online wants to respond.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates to the public service loan payoff pilot program. I wasn't sure if I heard you say this, but I'm interested in making sure that the degrees that we pay off are related or applicable to the service that they're providing to our public here. In other words, I don't want to be paying off a 18th century German literature degree for a nurse, that we have hired. I need it to be something fairly related. Is that something you can make sure happens?
Yes, absolutely. So this was originally scoped with teachers, but we realized very quickly that there were
Oh,
other.
it might be applicable then. 18th century German literature might be something that, we'd want them to have. So I just want to make sure it's applicable.
Absolutely. We quickly realized that there were more needs in Beaufort County than just teachers with loan payoff programs. And
Right.
so that's where we will get with the experts from TCL, USCB, and the school district and figure out how holistically we can manage that.
Right. We may need engineers for stormwater in the county. We may need engineers for programs at Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer Authority. I mean, there are lots of reasons we could use this kind of program.
Absolutely, Mr. Flowing. One of the issues that we are seeing is pharmacy tax, and
Yeah. Oh,
and also bookkeepers and accountants. So we understand that this can go more holistically, and then what we'll do is we'll partner to try and leverage those funds so that it grows from the $1 million investment to perhaps a $2 million investment that Community Foundation can grab a hold of.
Love it. Thank you.
I think the biggest intent too with this whole workforce component, and we've recognized this not just in workforce, but infrastructure and really everything that we're dealing with, is our responsibility as we see it as the county is to put our arms around the situation. We may not fund the entire program, but basically collaborate and collect with everybody and then grow this program that we have different contributors in. So we see us as the facilitator, and these specific programs are just kind of our first fund into facilitating something bigger.
And we also see this having, Mr. Flanagan, having a lasting impact. So our initial $1 million investment could go towards community foundation reinvesting those types of dollars over and over and over again, not necessarily with Beaufort County dollars in 4 to 6 years, but that we're funding the initial push. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that I'm hoping that that you can reach out and put your arms around the Beaufort Jasper EOC, the Equal Opportunity Commission, because they have access to resources that will help in several of these kinds of programs, and might be a conduit for additional funds, might be a conduit for execution of our program goals. So I need to make sure you reach out.
Got it.
Let me know if you need a contact.
Appreciate it.
And I have their contact information. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. One, I'll take this one first since we're already talking about the public service. One of the things I would like to see with it if we do go down this road would have to be something along the lines of they have to sign up for an extended period of time. I know right now, let's just take teachers, for example. There are programs with Title I schools that if you stay with the school for 2 or 3 years, then they'll drop off part of your loans. And that's great and well, but we still have the retention level in our school district. It's still usually 3 years. So I don't know if there's a way to gradually increase it or do it in increments based on years of service to try to get people to stay longer. Because obviously longevity gives better service. So I don't know if that's something we could work towards or add in there that, you know, they do have to agree to work in Beaufort County for so many years or in that job for so many years for it to apply.
Yes, excellent point, Mr. Cunningham. And yes, when you look at these programs that are modeled in other municipalities across the state and the nation, there definitely is a timeline step approach. So for every year or every 5 years, there's a higher payoff point.
Perfect. And my other one I want to talk about, I think it's a couple slides down, we talked about electrical vehicles. Could you walk me through that some? One of my biggest questions, I won't go into the whole for electric cars, not electric cars, that's a whole nother debate. But I guess my biggest question would be, yeah, we're going to build these stations, but who is going to be paying for the electricity to be recharging these cars? I asked that question as a business operator because we ended up having to put, you know, outside locks on our stuff because people are charging their cars for our business. So my question is going to be, who's going to be funding that electricity? So right now, residents pay for gas. So who's going to be funding that bill?
Sure. So the initial project plan for the community readiness aspect says that Beaufort County will pay for businesses to have it installed. However, the businesses are responsible for paying the bill as well as for upkeep. And this would be done in conjunction with the electric vehicle consultant that y'all have agreed to fund.
Will businesses have the opportunity to not enter into that program if they choose not to?
Yeah, so it would be an opt-in program that, again, the fund would be through Community Foundation or through Beaufort County, depending on the results of the consultant survey, or I'm sorry, the consultant study. And what we would do with that is allow businesses to apply, and then we would go ahead and fund the initial upfront.
Thank you.
Another thought on that real quick though is the energy component is very, very fitting because yes, we got electric vehicles and then we have, how are you going to power all that? So potentially, say in a gas station approach, it's a revenue approach. That could be the same thing that's done, say, at a Walmart or a Target or a downtown city of Beaufort parallel park, and that there's a revenue component to charge. So it's not a free of charge, but that would be something that we can facilitate as we develop a plan for the community at large and coordinate with our business partners. This would be first looking at our own infrastructure, our own vehicles, our own charging equipment, and then taking it to the community with some seed money to develop such a program.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, Jared. I honestly haven't thought about that myself, because that's the biggest downfall of any business that I've talked to is they're saying it's not that we're against it or for it. It's none of our business. We don't want to be involved. We just don't want to foot the bill.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people feel that way. So that's a good point. There's a way to, maybe it is like a meter charge and you pay for the time you charge. And that's definitely something I'd be interested in. I think that would be a route to explore first. I think it'd make businesses more willing in Beaufort County to go that way if they want to go that direction, whether I agree or not with it. I think that's more feasible for businesses to tackle if that is something we could offer right off the bat. It's more expensive to go back and fix it than it is to offer it that way up front.
Yeah, and I think with adoption of any new technology, the first concept is to put it out there. Usually it's free or almost free. And then as technology develops, and you can see this with anything from Netflix started out at $5 and now it's $20. So as there's adoption, then there's associated charges and costs. So I think some of the newer charging infrastructure now has a credit card ready swipe for just that approach. So, but we can definitely include that as we develop a concept and a program for that.
Thanks, y'all. I have no more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good points. Mr. Rodman.
Yeah, a couple points. Very comprehensive presentation, an awful lot for us to digest. It strikes me that it would be useful to continue this discussion in each of our committees if we were to allocate each of these projects to a committee to look at. And then I think some good things would come out of that discussion. Secondly, if I understand this, about half the money is available now and half of it comes later on. So there needs to be some prioritization about which ones we can get on. But those are my thoughts on the ARPA piece. I think we're off and running. Just a side note on the electric cars. I've yet to see anybody connect the dots on how we're going to get rid of the coal industry that produces our electrical power, and we're going to go to electrical cars. But that's, I guess, I'm just old-fashioned. I don't see how that
Keep
works.
preaching, Stu. I'm with you, brother.
Mr. Rodman, I have a white paper that I'll send you separately on that, okay?
Okay.
On the first part with the, we have received half of that. So the first tranche was in May. We received 18 million out of our 37 million. And 1 year from them, so next May, we'll receive the second. So we'll be whole with the 37 million. I think the size of these projects and the number of these projects, I feel pretty confident that we're not going to be able to expend 18 millions in the next 9 months. So prioritizing the projects is important, but I don't think it's as important as maybe it be with other programs, because the funding's going to be here shortly for the remaining 18 million.
Other comments?
I have one more comment. I know that, Jared, you've been working on broadband with Patrick, and I see 500,000. Oh, that's not enough, but you're counting on some matching dollars, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
broadband, it is mentioned in here specifically in ARPA that you can use broadband or water and sewer. However, there are so many people on the broadband push from local, state, federal, to the point that the feds and the state are pushing down other bills and infrastructure with broadband push. So we didn't put much money in there for broadband. However, our intent as a county, again, is to facilitate this and bring all of our internet service providers and all the opportunities. The state has a great resource in the Office of Regulatory Staff. So bring all those resources together, and then our $500,000 is seed money towards that endeavor. But our goal collectively as staff and as the county is to facilitate that we can ensure that broadband is countywide in the very near future. So.
And just so council understands, one other aspect to that is that Patrick Hill already plays a pretty significant role with broadband providers in directing them where the needs are and things like that, as well as he does both professionally and in his personal time. He dedicates a lot of his effort outside of work to cybersecurity and educating himself about that and working with that. So he'll be taking a strong lead as we work with South Coast Cyber Center on internships and helping them fulfill their goal of establishing a program here in Beaufort County as well.
Thank you.
If I might weigh in, to Alice's point, not a whole lot of funds were allocated toward the broadband project, and that was one of our planning retreat items from last year. And I certainly was of the mindset that the opera funds were going to actually supply most of the monies needed to ensure that we get broadbands out into our rural areas, our rural communities. That having been said, then Jared and Eric, I certainly hope that what you say is actually viable and that we can recruit other funds to ensure that we provide the extension of broadband into our rural communities to ensure that we, number one, help our school children with their homeworks and things of that nature, but also to help the communities at large facilitate a more active role with high-speed internet and transacting business, educational aspects and things of that nature.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilmember Dawson, and we did say that last year. That was in the early stages of what was going on, but we were not aware at that particular point that the state of South Carolina was going to take a significant role. And as you all know, the governor created a state broadband office in the intervening time frame, and most of their function and work plan is to bring broadband to needed areas throughout the state. And we've listened to the person that directs that. We've talked to the person that directs that, Mr. Stitzinger. And so that's why we reduced our allocation, because the state is stepped up and taken a bigger lead than we first imagined. And again, Patrick Hill and Jared and Heather, they're all working on that. That's why we hired Heather, is so that we could make sure that we were not allocating funds to things that were being taken care of and needs that were being taken care of in other areas of the state and the federal level, or that other jurisdictions were doing. So we share your concern. It's a concern of ours as well. We want to see that accomplished. We want to see everybody that's capable of having broadband has that ability to participate in that. So we'll continue to work on that.
All right, good enough.
And one other thing to add on that, similar with other funding pots, you don't see any transportation projects on here because there's numerous transportation opportunities with other funding mechanisms beyond ARPA as well. So that's the thought process, as Eric mentioned, is in dealing and coordinating with the state. They've already put some grants out there and they have a ton more money. So it is of utmost importance, but that's the reasoning. Yep.
All right. If you would speak to the community buildings, I see you got slated for Gardens Corner and St. Helena, and I forgot the other place, Defusky. Give me some detailed information, what that entails, the use of it.
Yeah, so this is a very open building for multi-use. Where this came from, again, is through the task force. We had different things that came up. One thing was telehealth and mental health. As we've realized through COVID, a lot of things have gone virtual, including meetings and specifically even doctor's appointments. So what this is kind of a hub in the community. So there's opportunities for that. There's space that could be available for clinics or for COVID shots, or have folks come in and provide services in that. It's not something necessarily that's manned fully from a county standpoint, but it's available. It's also, when we got to thinking about that, and specifically Defusky reminded us of this, we took a visit out to Defusky a couple months ago, several of us from staff, but that there's other needs besides just telehealth. There's community needs or gatherings or open space that would be useful. So we thought that maybe we could kill 2 birds or 3 birds, maybe even 4 birds with one stone, And in Mksk, obviously made a lot of sense there, but maybe other areas throughout the county, being in the northern part of the county, whether it's Garden Corner or somewhere else, but somewhere in the northern part, and then also somewhere in the northeastern in the St. Helena region. So that's the kind of thought process, and but we'd love any input or direction that you might have on something like that.
Would these be 3 new buildings or retrofitted buildings?
Any and all of the above. So this
Okay.
is whether we have an existing facility and we want to expand it or rehab it, or if we don't have a suitable building and it's better to build a brand new building. So yes, just a very flexible space would be the intent.
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Let me, if I might add one thing to that, particularly out in Gardens Corner area in Councilmember Dawson's district in St. Helena, we have existing rec facilities. We are not talking about spending money to improve rec facilities on properties that are not owned by the county. So I need to make that clear. If folks want us to own the properties and they want to work with us to take over ownership of the properties, then of course those existing facilities would be eligible for projects underneath this funding. So.
Okay. All right. So in summarization, first of all, this was an excellent presentation. This needs to get into the hands of county council now so that they can digest this, come up with additional questions they may have. You've hit the nail on the head when you said this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do some things with money we never had or could ever get, except for what has happened to us now. When you had the loan forgiveness program, I will say to you, we have shortages in a variety of areas. Our target should be those people who have just graduated. Because if it's a loan forgiveness program and I'm a teacher, I've been working for 5 or 6 years, I still have loans, would I be eligible for this program? I think you need certain criteria. It should be newly graduated, they have to have a job, and they have to be willing to stay in that job for a period of time before their loan would be forgiven.
Thank you for that feedback. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Okay?
Joe,
We will, so we'll give this presentation, make sure we send out all of council, as well as we got a spreadsheet that puts it all in table format. So we'll send that out as well, so everybody has that. And again, any comments you have, send that directly to myself or Whitney, and we'll get it to Heather, and then we'll package it back up and update as needed.
Great. Final comment, Brian?
yeah, thank you. And it is to wrap it up. I would urge my fellow council members to not think parochially. Don't think about just the stuff in your district. Think about the impacts county and even region wide when we're going through this, because this is really big, and we need to make sure our entire community sees lasting benefit from this. So please don't just think about what you can do in your area. Think about, and normally that's, we think about building projects and infrastructure improvements just in our district. If you know that there's a potential project in somebody else's district, please offer that up. If you know of something in my district that might be benefited from this kind of thing, please help me get it, bring it up to me so that I can help, I can get this maybe in the program. So thank you, Joe. Thanks for the time.
Yes, and thank all of the members who have voiced their opinions. Some very good ideas have come out here that will get you to say, okay, let's do this way. Okay, so if you will send all that information to us, we'll respond as quickly as we can and move on. Because as you said, the clock is ticking. We do only have so much time to spend all of this money.
That's right.
Okay, so thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to bringing you details.
Great, thank you. Mr. Greenway.
Yeah, if I might just to finish off what we need to do next, you and I and the vice chairman probably need to work on next step. It would be my recommendation, instead of you dividing up these projects into various committees, that we perhaps take this to and leave this housed in the executive committee, which is made up of the chairmen of all the other committees, to actually move these projects forward.
Yes,
if that's
I absolutely agree with you that time is of the essence.
And we'll continue to do that if you're okay with that, sir.
Yep.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Rob Merchant. He's going to come up and talk to you about CIP and the comp plan. And then we're going to turn it over to Dale Butts, the ACA, after we show the video for the finance department. That's really not for your information. That's to kind of give Sarah cues of where I'm headed next. Okay. So anyway, so thank y'all.
Good morning, Mr. Merchant.
Good morning, and once again, thanks for the opportunity to highlight the comprehensive plan. I just wanted to bring one section of the plan to your attention. I think it's germane to the Finance Committee, is that one of the requirements for jurisdictions in South Carolina is that we develop what is called a priority investment chapter. And essentially, if you can go on to the next slide, essentially what that is a 10-year CIP. It requires us to project our revenues over the next 10 years and then look at what our needs are in terms of capital improvements. So what we have in this plan, and this is part of that action playbook section of the comprehensive plan, is a comprehensive list of all major infrequent and non-reoccurring county projects that we anticipate over the next year or 10 years. And obviously, anytime you're looking at a 10-year projection, your first 5 years are probably a little more in focus than your second 5 years. But what this does is provide a framework for, the county will have a 5-year CIP that this will feed into, and then that will be updated annually. And then that 5-year CIP will be used to inform, the annual budget process and what goes into that. So I hats off to Jared Fralix and Brittany Fields for really compiling this list. The next slide is just kind of a sample, but this is a very comprehensive list of projects, and shown how, and this is just one of 7 pages, how that carries over the next 10 years in the dollar amount. So we're excited about this. We did this 10 years ago, but that CIP was a little more of a wish list, and we're hoping that this is a little more, in the fiscal ballpark and things that are that we could pursue over the next 10 years. So with that, if you have any questions, we can go on to the next item.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, this plan is readily available for anyone to see, download. I know it's a very comprehensive plan. I know it was well thought out. It was put together. The amount of data that's available is outstanding and astounding, what you have done. So congratulations. And
we encourage everyone to take a look at it online. It's linked to our website.
Yep.
So, okay.
And for council, it'll continue to be in your backup materials, or at least a hyperlink to it as well. So we're going to run the finance video now. Everyone, I want to just commend all of the staff for the job that they did on the videos. I think it provides you all information that you may not be aware of, in addition to what we're going over specifically in detail. Patrick and Chuck Atkinson did a phenomenal job with theirs yesterday, and I've heard Dale has done a phenomenal job with his. I won't build it up too much in case you are disappointed, so we'll leave the expectations a little low. But anyway, so if you can run it, Sarah, whenever you're ready.
Hello, council members. I'm Dale Butts, Assistant County Administrator for our Finance Division. Today, you're going to hear from our elite group of team leaders who represent some amazing departments in this division. In no particular order, you'll hear brief reports from our CFO, Mr. Hayes Williams, our assessor, Ms. Ebony Sanders, our budget director, Ms. Pinky Harriet, our HR director, Mr. Scott Marshall, our interim register of deeds, Ms. Shirley Smith, and our purchasing director, Mr. Dave Thomas. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to give you a glimpse into these various departments, and I look forward to working with you on their behalf throughout this budget season.
Good morning, Council. My name is Hayes Williams. I am the new Chief Financial Officer for Beaufort County. Today I'm reporting to you on the Finance Department. Fiscal year 2022 will be an exciting year with changes across the department. We're currently revamping operations and finance. We've hired a new finance director. Her name is Denise Christmas. She's been with us 2 weeks, but she has over 22 years of governmental accounting experience. She's going to be a tremendous asset to the changes taking place in the Finance Department. We're also looking at filling open positions that we have with senior accountant and staff accountants. We'll be evaluating personnel in the department and assigning and reassigning tasks based on their strengths and weaknesses. We'll be evaluating policies and procedures for needed change for operating efficiency and effectiveness in reporting the financial statements. We're also looking at training our staff. We may reclassify one of our FTEs to get additional training during the budget process for 2023. We have two major projects that we're taking on during the fiscal year 2022. The first is GASB 87, which is accounting for leases. The GASB standards require that governmental entities review their leases, both their operating and capital leases, to ensure proper disclosure within the financial statements. This is going to be a big task and require a lot of work from us, but we have a plan in place to make this an easy transition. We're also looking at getting the annual comprehensive financial report prepared well before the year end of 12/31. We look forward to all these changes and we look forward to your support. Thank you.
For fiscal year 2023, the Beaufort County Assessor's Office will be preparing for the quadrennial reassessment that will occur in tax year 2023. The Beaufort County Deputy Assessors and I are in discussion now in preparing the staff for the quadrennial reassessment. In preparation for the quadrennial reassessment that's going to occur in 2023, I potentially see a budget increase to cover the following. We will need Marshall and Swift estimate cost valuation tables for real property. This is an end-user agreement. It's an assessment fee that is only paid at the time of the quadrennial reassessment for preparation for the reassessment. The cost estimate is around $30,000. Additional things that we will require or we will need to complete the quadrennial reassessment is overtime, supplies, postage increasing, printing, education for staff and the public. Keep in mind, we have to value over 132,000 parcels at the time of the quadrennial reassessment. The public quadrennial education campaign is one that I would like to implement ahead of the quadrennial reassessment or ahead of mailing the notices. This will include completing a reassessment video, updating our current reassessment citizen guide, and public appearances throughout the county. So I look forward to our 2023 quadrennial reassessment.
Hi, my name is Pinky Harriet. I'm the budget director for Beaufort County. In the upcoming fiscal year 2023, we are looking to fully implement some new software that we have recently signed on with called ClearGov. ClearGov has 3 modules within itself to help build a better budget document. That is operational budgeting, personnel budgeting, and capital budgeting. Along with that, we are working with the engineering department and division to create a 3-year CIP plan and to address some of our upcoming needs in our facilities master plan. Also in fiscal year 2023, we are looking at creating a new grants policy, also some SOPs to help department heads apply and manage and monitor grants moving forward. With HR, we are working on an updated FTE account project as well. So we look forward to having a lot more clear, much longer fiscal year 2023 budget process.
Hello, Mr. Chair and members of council. I am very pleased to let you know what the Human Resources team has been up to in this fiscal year. Most of our year was spent fulfilling the county ordinance requirement to conduct a classification and compensation review with an external agency every 4 years, which we just did with the Evergreen study, as you know, we just completed. The next review of our class and comp plan is scheduled for FY24, and again, that's by ordinance. Every 2 years it has to be reviewed by staff. So we'll review it again in FY24 and bring you any subsequent recommendations as a result of that review. We're still updating employee information on the back end in our human resources information systems with regard to pay grades and job class nomenclatures and those sorts of things, just tidying up loose ends with the study. We're also currently reviewing all of our employee life cycle processes to include activities like recruiting, hiring, employee management, performance evaluations, training programs, etc. Our goal is to establish clear process flow and tools that will assist employees and managers. Coming up in FY23, what I anticipate we'll be up to in human resources is that your current employee manual was last revised in August of 2016. Since August of 2016, as you're well aware, we've had Hurricane Matthew. We've also just gone through and are still going through a global COVID-19 pandemic. On the human resources, we'll learn a lot from those two events, and we'll be incorporating a lot of those changes into the next employee manual update, which again we'll take on during the next fiscal year. We'll also begin the HR strategic planning process. To my knowledge, this has not been done in Beaufort County, and I think it's sorely needed. This will be a formal, multifaceted planning effort that will establish a way forward to ensure that Beaufort County becomes the employer of choice in the region. The result will be a county council approved plan that will establish clear objectives with measurable outcomes and clear accountability mechanisms. Your support is truly appreciated, and best wishes to you all.
Good morning, Council. I'm Shirley Smith, Interim Register of Deeds. I'm going to keep this brief. The projected revenue for the Register of Deeds budget year 2022-23 is $9,915,876.24. The number is very fluent with only 3 months to base it on, along with not knowing what the real estate market will be in the coming year. The numbers may have to be adjusted before the final budget. We plan to hold tight to this budget with exceptions on things like the new increase on postage, products, paper, and printing supplies. We may have to adjust these figures. The Register of Deeds is one proud office, and that will conclude my presentation of our projected revenue budget 2022-23 fiscal year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Dave Thomas, your Chief Purchasing Officer for the Beaufort County. I've been here 14 years, and we'd just like to introduce our staff of 2, and we'd like to thank you for everything you've done for us in the past and present. And we were very looking forward to our fiscal year 22 and 23. We got some major changes in our department as far as our policies and procedures based on our last audit. There are positive changes. We'll be adding some new electronic forms for departments to use. We've got some pretty good events and projects we're going to work on for the new year that we're looking forward to as far as public safety and our fire department, so we're looking forward to that. With that said, we do support 44 different departments as consultants, and as we provide all the solicitation support. We offer services for our auctions and our surplus property. We handle the P-card program and also manage all the contracts. With that said, again, thank you very much for your support. I'm going to introduce Victoria Moyer, who's our contract specialist. And again, thanks again for our new budget, we're going to hire an additional person who's going to be our senior administrative staff member, and we're almost got somebody in mind and almost ready to pull the trigger, but hopefully that person will come on board within the next month. But thank you very much again for all your support.
Thanks for the introduction, Dave. I really appreciate it and appreciate working for the county and the council and everything you do. I handle all of the contracts for the county. If you have a need for a contract, you contact me and I'll get you through the process. I also handle the solicitations, putting those out for bid and the entire bid process. I handle the county assets, the sale of the county assets, that is, and I look forward to trying to boost up my sales even more next fiscal year, getting more departments involved. I also handle the county P card. I'm the P card administrator, and I go over all of the reports and make sure that everybody has a card that needs a card, and make sure that we follow all of the rules. I would like to thank council again for the budget, so we can add an administrative assistant, and I would like to thank you for everything you do.
That's a lot of information, isn't it? You may not have even realized that the finance division, of course, includes a lot more departments than just finance. So thank you to all the department heads for putting those videos together. The only one that you did not hear from there was Business Services. Miss Edra Stevens was actually attending a conference that week in Greenville and was not able to do that video, but they have certainly been busy in their operations, and I'll tell you a little bit about what they've got going on. Right off the top, I want to thank Councilman Lawson for his leadership with the Finance Committee, and I'm just 5 weeks in to this position, and he's already been a big help to me, so thank you, sir, very much, and all of council for your support. Well, this is a budget retreat, so we're going to hear from our budget director, Pinky Harriet, about the calendar, timeline, that sort of thing, and we're going to get you out of here and to lunch pretty quickly, but maybe just tie up a few loose ends from what you heard there. One correction on that video from Miss Shirley in the Register of Deeds, that figure that she gave there of 9.9 million, that's for this current fiscal year that we're in. So she was basing that projection on the fact of that through the first quarter, we're on pace to collect 9.9 million in county revenue in that department. If you remember, it was 9.6 last year, FY21, and that was the most that we had collected in my 14 years here in county revenue. Mr. Somerville?
Thank you for coming back to that. I wondered about that. That's revenue, not expenditures.
Right.
Okay, I thought I was going to ask you how you spend $10 million on the. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's county retained. That's after we send Hilton Head, the town of Hilton Head, their transfer fee money. That's after we send the state the bulk of it, filing fees. So that's what that figure represents.
Dale, I have a question as well.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Dale, I wonder if you're ready to announce if you've locked in the new Register of Deeds and chained her to the desk.
I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. Flewellen, because I did just get word yesterday from our HR department that that individual has cleared all the screenings. So we are bringing on Miss Patty Green, Patsy. She goes by Patty Green from Jasper County. She's been the Register of Deeds there for 14 years, and she spent 16 years here in our own Register of Deeds office prior to that. So her experience of 30 years was hands down the best candidate that came forward. She lives here in Beaufort County. Some of you may know her, but for 14 years, she's been making that drive to Ridgeland. So she's very excited. She is tying up some loose ends there and some commitments that she has through the end of the year. So she's coming on in January. So we've got about another month and a half to stay as we are with Miss Shirley as the interim. And then Patty Green will be coming on board, and there's a couple of positions that are open in that office, and she'll address those once she gets here, and I can talk to you a little bit about our open positions in just a moment.
Good choice, Dale, is what I wanted to make sure everybody heard.
Thank you.
I have the utmost confidence in Patsy to be able to handle the job as well as you did, and for 14 years. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fluellen. I appreciate those kind words. Pinky, if you would come forward and tell us a little bit about where we are right now with the budget and what's to come.
Before Pinky does that, I apologize. I should have done this earlier. We are going to, before Pinky presents you all, we were fortunate enough through communication from John Rimbold to have the consultants for the airport here with us this week on site. So we thought we would take a moment right now. I'm gonna call on John or Whitney, whomever wants to do it, to come up to the podium to introduce these folks and let you know why they're here. They have some options for financing the Hilton Head expansion or processes that we needed to discuss with you all as a part of this retreat so that we can get some direction on proceeding with that all-important construction project. So.
Morning, John.
Good morning. Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. When I was an officer in the Marine Corps as a field artillery guy, we had planned targets and then we had targets of opportunity. Can you guess which one you are? We do have a great opportunity to give you an update on the terminal funding today. I want to give a quick introduction to Carl Ellington, who's one of the principals with Talbot Bright & Ellington. They've been our airports consultant. I should say that we've been lucky to have them as our consultant since 2009. We've completed over $75 million in projects with their help since then, most of which have been done in the last 5 to 6 years. So it's been busy. We have a great partnership. But we're ready to talk to you about the terminal funding, which we've talked about many times in this forum, similar forums. But as you know, we've got a project that's estimated to cost about $52 million all in. That's our latest estimates. Good news is, as you also know, we've got a 40% head start thanks to the FAA grant program. So that's great news. So we've still got a $30 to $35 million funding gap that we've been exploring in the last year or so to figure out the best way to cover that gap and make sure we can move the project forward. So in talking with Carl lately, I'm going to give you kind of a 50,000 foot view of where we can go without getting into a whole lot of details. But we're ready to move into the next step, which is to work with the financial consultant who's also part of the Talbot Bright & Ellington team. So they're already under contract. And it's a firm by the name of Newton & Associates up in Charlotte. And they do this for a living every day. They work on this kind of an agreement. So the funding plan that we're going to try to work on with Newton & Associates is along the same lines we've talked about before, where we would have, issue revenue bonds to fund that $30 to $35 million gap. But then what Newton & Associates does, and what is very normal in the airport business, is that the financing of those bonds, as well as a cost recovery program within the airport, is financed by the airport tenants, namely the airlines. And that's all done by way of a very detailed and sophisticated airlines operating agreement that we'll negotiate together. So the next step really is to engage the airlines with Newton & Associates, with Talbot Bright & Ellington, and with senior administration to work on those steps and figure out how we do that. And it's important to remember too, I want to make sure that you recall that from past briefs, we did have a very large stakeholder group to help put this terminal project together. And key members of that group from the very beginning were the airlines. So this is something they're used to doing in other airports. This is a project that they've been bought into since the very beginning. They understand this step in the process. And they've also informed the design of the terminal. So they're They know what they're getting, they like what they're getting, so the next step is to bring them in and then discuss how we fund that. So I want to bring Carl up now, he's going to fill in any of the holes that I left, and then if you've got some questions, we'll try to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Thanks, John. You did a very good job. There's not much to fill in. Well, I'm here to answer any questions you have about that, but in summary, the main thing is this is a normal process that sponsors go through. The county is a sponsor owner of the airport. Normal process that you've gone through. You had stakeholders, users of the airport that have been involved in the process of developing the plans and specifications. So there's no surprises to the tenants, the airlines that'll be using your building as they go forward to operate an airport, to operate and bring passengers in and get passengers out of Hilton Head Island. So that process is normal. It's progressed logically and reasonably to this point. We're giving you a snapshot in time right now today, here to answer any questions about that. The next step is, again, to meet with the tenants, the airlines, to talk about the financial side of this. And we have Newton and Associates, as he mentioned, that will be leading that process along with the county finance. They'll be involved as much as they would like to be. We'll keep them informed as much as they would like to be. And then when all that is done, it'll come back to you. The county's part at that point will be to assist with getting those bonds issued to pay for this. So that's kind of where we are now, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions from council members? I'll start off by saying, what would be the time frame for the issuance of the bonds? How long would the bonds be issued for? And what would be the effect on the overall debt for the county?
Okay, and those three questions will probably have to get back with some of those, because some of those details I don't have today, because those are developing. But let me give you in general what we're talking about. What we will determine with the airlines is a schedule for this to happen. Okay, so right now we're through with the plans and specifications of the building. Mm-hmm. We have a rough order of magnitude of a cost. $52 million, 52 to maybe a little bit more because of what's going on with the economy, but we'll get even a better detailed analysis. The next step will be to discuss how that will be paid, the terms of that, how that would be paid for, the details of the lease agreements, and that would be operation and maintenance of the facility as well as the debt service on the bonds. Mm-hmm. And that will be developed into a schedule that we will present to you at that time and be part of that. As far as the issuance of the bonds, again, that has to do with the schedule that is developed and the conversations that are happening now. I don't want to tie any hands to anything, anybody's hands right now with regard to that, but I would imagine it's going to happen as soon as possible because you do have a big demand for need of that building. So we'll try to move this thing along as quickly as possible, but my guess would be we'll know a lot more detail in the next several months that we can bring back to you on a detailed schedule and timeline on that. As far as the exposure to the county, my understanding is what it'll be is a revenue bond issue, and the county will have the leases and contracts in place and a revenue stream to pay that debt, but the county would be the one issuing the bonds. The county would have that debt and would issue those bonds, but I would welcome any comment on that from the county if they would like to add. Whitney, if you want to add anything to that process. Did that answer your three?
Yes, it does. Okay. Thank you.
I'll just provide a simple recap from the staff perspective. Built into the contract with Talbot Wright and Ellington for the design and scope and plan of this airport expansion is the use of these financial consultants, Newton and Associates. And from our perspective, we really want to rely on them. This is something that they do. This is their niche. This is their expert area. So for us to be able to work with them is an opportunity that we didn't know we were afforded actually until yesterday. So from the staff perspective, we're pretty happy about that. We floated a few different ideas to you all over the past few months that we've just discussed possible funding mechanisms for this expansion, being that it's quite a large one. And in light of all the other opportunities that we have to expand our county in terms of infrastructure. We really wanted to preserve our 8% for those other things. We weren't certain about the possibility of a revenue bond just because of the nature of the revenue bond having to come from the airport itself. And being an enterprise fund, it should stand on its own 2 feet. It should be self-supporting and self-liquidating. After having a discussion yesterday with Mr. Ellington, they have presented to us the possibility of a revenue bond on the basis of renegotiated contracts with the airlines. As he has stated, they've been involved from the beginning. They know what to expect out of this expansion. They have been able to provide their own input from an operational need standpoint, and those desires have been incorporated into this plan. So to John's point, they know what they're getting. They know how it's going to work out. They've already determined their profitability out of the Hilton Head Airport as a location for them from which to conduct their business. And therefore, as an industry norm, they would be expecting that we would renegotiate our fees with them. So this is not anything that will take them by surprise. The only unknown at this point is how those fees will be negotiated and to what extent to cover the debt service on this airport. You also heard today that we are willing and proposing to make an initial investment into the terminal from ARPA funds in the amount of $2 million that will help knock down the cost of the debt that the county must issue. But as he stated today, staff will begin working with Newton and Associates. We will come up with some numbers. I have a feeling they will probably very closely mirror those that Mr. Hayes Williams presented to you earlier this year when we're discussing the potential for A and H tax funding. I'm happy to say that that is something that we can probably put to the side, not from a funding standpoint completely saying that we won't need that at all, but we are in the position now and of the belief that we will not need that as our primary funding mechanism for this expansion. So I think that will make some of us happy. We are still of the opinion that we should ask the town of Hilton Head to offer some sort of contribution. I don't think that they contest that. I think that we just need to provide to you guys some metrics and some pro formas so that there is buy-in holistically from our county. And that is where we currently stand. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have, although I may not have specifics at this moment. We can work to get you some of those.
I know Mr. Llewellyn has a question. Go ahead, Mr. Llewellyn.
First, a statement. You know, throughout this whole project and conversations regarding it, I always noted the lack of panic when we talked about having to spend $32 million. It's like, of course, there was a way we were going to do this, and I'm glad that this appears to be the way. Whitney, I'm glad you're there because maybe you can help answer this question in the future. At one point in time, the county always has a pot of money that we're cycling throughout the year, throughout long-term money that sits in various investment accounts. I'm wondering whether or not we might be able to self-finance this, if you can explore that opportunity and determine whether or not it's possible, and issue those bonds. In other words, borrow the money from ourselves, like I do to my savings account all the time. And, maybe you could figure out whether or not that's an opportunity we could take advantage of and knock our interest rate down and retain a good, viable interest rate ourselves. And then that way we're not using our 8% valuation available loan amount. Okay?
Thank you for that suggestion.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Somerville?
Yeah, Brian just made me think of something. I'm guessing because this is an enterprise fund, does that go against our 8%?
No, sir.
That's
If
what I
we did
thought.
a
Okay.
revenue bond, it would not.
Right. But the question is, and I was listening very carefully to try to understand what the renegotiation with the airlines would look like. It sounds like what you're saying is you're going to renegotiate and increase our revenue from them to offset the debt service on these bonds.
You
And
understood
then
perfectly.
also the possible source of the town of Hilton Head. Are you in a position to give us some idea of what percentage of the $35 million might be from the cash flow from the increased fees from the airlines and possibly Hilton Head?
I could not tell you exactly what that total would be. We would hope that it would be substantial enough to cover the majority of the debt service required. But I cannot tell you exactly at this point whether or not that fee will increase by 30% or 50% or what have you.
The only other question I would ask is, do you have reason to believe that the airlines are amenable to this, or is this going to be a tough sell?
No, I don't think it would be a tough sell based upon information provided from Mr. Ellington yesterday, but I'll gladly step aside and he can bolster that comment if he so chooses.
Yes, thank you. It will not be a tough sale because they've been involved in discussions and of this and negotiations of the plans and specifications from the beginning. So they expect this is coming. They expect there to be new leases and agreements with them for payment of operation and maintenance as well as the debt service on the building going forward. So that's a normal process that they go through in airports all over where they operate when these type of projects happen. So we're at that point. That's the snapshot of today of where we are in the process.
Ms. Howard?
Although I certainly understand the need for this project, we have so many other infrastructure projects that are needed throughout the county. I just look forward to more details about it, to understand how the money's going to work, so it doesn't jeopardize other things. I know it's an enterprise fund, but I don't want us to be funding this over other things that are just as important. Thank you.
And that's what I understood. This is forthcoming. The question probably is to you, John. The final design, has that been done now so that as we go through the funding mechanisms, this is what the airport's going to look like?
Yes. The design is complete and we're ready to enter into these negotiations.
Because I know at times there was some talk about, well, we could put this many gates in with the idea of down the line, we could add a couple more gates. Where does that stand? Did we just do it all at once or is it incremental?
Great question. I think what happened was we had some discussions of the current plan and a future plan. They got a little bit muddled. So there's still a distinct current plan and future plan. The future plan is a little bit cloudier. But the future plan with the 3 gates, as I've presented to you all along through the last couple of years, is the plan. That's a plan that's been permitted with the town of Hilton Head.
Okay.
That's a plan that's been approved by the FAA.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
One more quick one. Are you acting as our bond counsel on this as well?
No, I'm not. You're going to use your same bond counsel that you currently have with it, and we've worked with that firm and her before. So we're used to what they're going to need, and we're engineers, not attorneys, but we work with attorneys very often, as well as the financial consultant. That's Newton and Associates. So there's really 3 groups that we got. One is the designers, the engineers and planners. That's us, architects. And we have working for us, the Newton and Associates, which are the financial consultants that work with the airline to develop the leases and the contracts. And they're attorneys also. And then you have bond counsel that'll help you with your getting what's needed to go and issue the revenue bonds.
Mm-hmm. And the final comment is, well, once again, a great project. Time is of the essence. Every day we delay, there's cost added, there's time added. So, it's in your court right now to bring this to fruition.
Joe.
So thank you for that update.
I can just,
Mr. Lawson.
one thing, and obviously we've mentioned a couple of times here today, and I think it's a great idea. Obviously trying to figure out how to do this in the long run. So again, the thoughts on this, but we've mentioned the town of Hilton Head many times here, so we can't let them off the hook. We've come up with a solution that we think will work. So I know that Eric has been talking to Mark Orlando already. I mean, this is a county airport, but it benefits the town of Hilton Head more than anybody else. So I think that they need to be part of this and have some skin in the game as well for what we're doing.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Back to the airport.
Yes, sir. Back to work.
You're going to get to go. I just need to know from council, we've got 2 more presenters. We can go to lunch and come back and do Pinky and Scott after lunch, or we can go ahead and finish the finance portion so we can move directly into community services. I just need to know what you all want to do. I don't want to wear you out. You all have been sitting for a long time. We've thrown a lot of information at you this morning. If you need a mental and physical break from all of that, we're happy to give you that at this point.
What's the pleasure of?
Pinky's been sitting there waiting to talk to us.
Yeah, certainly we can do Pinky. Yeah, they're short.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll continue on then.
Okay. Good morning, Pinky.
Well, good morning. Well, I definitely don't want to hold you up from lunch. I'll be fairly brief and then tie into Scott Marshall because we're working together on a project as mentioned. This is the fiscal year 23 budget process. We are going to, as you have already seen, our calendar is much longer this year and we started much earlier this year, which is a huge goal that we received, feedback we received from last fiscal year. Our budget season officially began in October with a budget kickoff that we had with our department heads, and we have started already working through some of the kinks. We are currently in the middle of starting our capital improvement plan. As Mr. Merchant mentioned earlier, tying into the comprehensive plan, we are taking a smaller bite, if you will, this year, and we're going to do a 3-year CIP to kind of reevaluate our previous projects, working very closely with engineering and capital projects, and trying to evaluate what the status of the current list is, and also taking that and implementing it into a 3-year plan for us, for council to adopt. Also, this year during the budget process, we are going to fully implement ClearGov, which is a budgeting software that has 3 separate modules that has operational, capital, and personnel. We're going to start off with operational and capital. We're kind of the guinea pigs for the personnel, so Scott and I decided we'll fully implement that in fiscal year 24, so we have worked out all of our kinks. Also, this year in the budget process, we have created, at administration's request, a budget committee and a capital plan committee. The budget committee will review departments' requests that have increased significantly from last fiscal year to this fiscal year, and sort of do a budget defense presentation. Other than that, we're also going to continue to clean up our general ledger, working closely with finance to continue to reduce the chart of accounts that we currently have, more so tackle the special revenue funds in the upcoming year. The CIP. So speaking a little bit more into our 3-year CIP, we're going to focus on fiscal year 23 through 25. Can I wait for that document? But anywho, we're going to create a full-fledged document for council to review as a part of the budgeting process. This is a quick overview of, and I'm not going to read this to you, we will send it out to council to review, of the process of the CIP that we plan to implement for fiscal year 23 to 25. As I mentioned, we will review existing lists of projects and clean some of those up. Hopefully, we will be able to get some of them completed by the end of fiscal year 22, to start a fresh plan for 23. During this process, the capital plan committee will review and rank priorities based on council's recommendations, and then we will present as a part of the budget, as a part of the overall budget as we bring it to council in April. And then other than that, I'm going to kind of give a quick segue into our new process with Scott. Our FTE count, as mentioned in our in the budget video.
Good morning, Council. I'll be very brief. The largest part of your budget and sometimes the most difficult part is your people portion. That's the most expensive part of your budget every year. It's going to be from now on. And it's important to get that piece right. You have to know how many full-time equivalent positions you're going to fund in each department and each organizational code, so you know what else you have available to spend money on. And so last year, around the same time when you were preparing for budget, you had some turnover in key positions on staff, and I think that contributed to getting a little bit behind the power curve in terms of establishing your FTE, or your full-time equivalent counts. So we are going to get ahead of that curve this year. Pinky and I are working with departments. We'll be visiting each department, and we'll be doing an FTE audit with the departments. And the going-in assumption is that if you have a position on the books right now, and you have someone sitting in the position, it'll be counted as an FTE going forward. We will examine with you the vacancies that you have to determine which of those vacant active positions are going forward. And we also have what we call inactive positions that are listed in Munis. And we'll review each of those inactive positions In all likelihood, the inactive positions will probably go away. And so we'll do two things with these visits. One, we'll establish a good FTE baseline for your FY23 budget. And the other thing that we will do is we will do a complete audit of the FTEs, and we will clean up our FTE count. So that's all. Any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you. I had a question.
Ms. Howard, you go first.
Go ahead.
Inactive positions, I know some departments have a very hard time hiring some of the lower pay positions.
Yes, ma'am.
Will those go away even though they're, I mean, I'm thinking of two departments, I won't name them in particular, that they can't fill them.
Right. We'll review all the inactive positions with the directors, but there are many active positions we have that remain vacant, and so we'll review those also. And the thought process is, if those positions haven't been filled, and if they're not likely to be filled, why do we want to encumber funds in the budget that we could be using for something else? So that's why we want to do a very thorough scrub, a very thorough look, and we want to involve the department directors in this, not necessarily making decisions for them, but with them.
Okay, so that's not to say that later they couldn't be filled if the economy gets, I mean, if people start coming back to work, or just trying to think of scenarios like in 9 months.
Right. Well, if we eliminate some of the positions, some of the inactive positions, which haven't been
Then they
filled for a
just
while,
go
that's
away.
why they're inactive, they will just go away.
Okay.
But you always have the option to introduce a budget amendment if you would like to add some FTEs to your
If they're
budget.
justified.
And we can go through that formal process with you if we get to that point where the labor market improves, where we can hire people, where our financial position improves, where you can afford to hire the people, we can revisit that with you.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Somerville.
At the executive committee last year, we talked about having a quarterly update on vacancies. And of course, we were looking particularly, I think at that time, at the detention center, but it certainly isn't limited to the detention center. I don't know whether it belongs in the executive committee or not, but I do think that the council will need to have an ongoing idea of what you're having to deal with in terms of filling the slots that need to be filled. And I'm not sure what we can do to help, whether it's money or what it is, but I think it's a good idea for all of our folks to be kind of updated periodically on difficulties you may be having and some of the departments may be having in terms of filling your slots. So keep us in mind. We're a resource. We want to help you. The executive committee is there for you. Again, I don't know whether that's the right committee, but that's where it is. So
I appreciate that, and I can work with Eric to find out what the right mechanism and delivery method would be for getting that information to you, but I would be happy to share that information with you. And I thank you for your offer for support, because I'm going to cash in on that next year when we start strategic planning for HR.
Excellent. Any other questions? Anybody online have a question? Okay, seeing none.
You're ready for lunch?
Yes, we're going to recess.
Joe, if I could just real quick and just kind of summarize things, because obviously finance has had a big part of this. And I know that I think it was last year, whenever at this time, we actually had Hayes as part of our finance department, and Whitney had just come on to start working. And that was our finance department at that point. So as you look now, having Pinky come on as finance director, Dale as the assistant county administrator, Hayes being given the CFO, and now Mrs. Christmas starting out, that we've got a really, really good team that has moved forward. I mean, our biggest thing is we'll be able to increase our transparency to the public by presenting a budget process that is easy to see. It's electronic, readily available to anyone who wants to see it. I know Hayes, within doing his monthly or finance committee meetings, our meeting updates of where we are financially, other things that we've been able to accomplish. And I actually had a list here, but I've scratched them off as we've gone through, and y'all have got up and talked. But obviously the big thing was saving the $5 million whenever we refunded and decreased debt, issuing a GO bond for $36 million. We implemented the employee comp and class study. We were able to complete our first audit, and we're working on those things right now with more audits to come. We were able to, the Register of Deeds put in a fraud alert system. We implemented the EverGov, and we are updating our procurement process. Also been able to put in place a solid waste to enterprise fund. And I mention all those things because that whole time this staff was understaffed and overworked, and yet they still came forward and were able to handle all those things and do all those things. And it also goes back to last is the committee we have, having Chris Herbershon on there with his knowledge and what he does, being the vice chair, but also having people on that committee such as Gerald Dawson and Stu Rodman and Brian Llewellyn. And it's been nice actually having virtual meetings. I like it because the whole council was there then. So it's not just those folks that have had a big impact on what we've done. But again, biggest thing is making it transparent and being fiscally responsible to the people of Beaufort County.
Thank you. Seeing no further action, we are going to recess till 1 p.m.